Welcome to the Aquarius Theory. In today's video, we will be going over vibration, frequency, and energy. But before we start, let's review information we covered in previous videos. In the first video, Introduction into Metaphysical Sciences of Astronomy and Numerology, I go over how you, the viewer, can gain more information on yourself. If you want to take that information as quote-unquote truth, that is all dependent upon you. Astrology and numerology are tools to give the individual insight on who they are. This concept is also highlighted in the movie The Matrix, when Neo first meets the Oracle. Once in the kitchen, the Oracle asks Neo if he thinks he's the one. Neo responds saying, "Honestly, I don't know." The Oracle then points to a sign hanging above the doorway. The sign, which was written in Latin, translated to "Know thyself." The Oracle then goes on to give Neo a secret, and she correlates being the one to being in love, saying no one can tell you that you're in love, you just know it. This scene greater signifies the focus of knowing yourself, because when you know yourself, you gain greater perspectives on who you are as an individual, which is the difference between thinking and knowing you. This comes full circle when I made the statement in the first video that this project, the Aquarius Theory, has less to do with you and more to do with myself. You see, on a personal note, I always had a certain level of awareness growing up. And this awareness gave me a certain perception of who I was. See, back then, who I was mostly based off of the perception of other people. It wasn't until I got older and started recognizing the patterns and situations I, individually, was placing myself in that I started to understand that there is a difference between who the world sees me as and who I am. Now, moving along, the second and third video of the Aquarius Theory deals with the 7 Hermetic Principles. And the 7 Hermetic Principles deals with the 7 fundamental principles of the universe, in my own opinion. Now, with that in mind, I go in depth talking about each of the 7 Hermetic Principles in order, starting with the principle of mentalism and ending with the principle of gender. In the end of the third video, I gave my interpretation of the information, stating how the first fundamental spark of the universe came in the form of a vibration. This vibration then goes on to set up 2 poles, 2 extremes of the same degree, 2 sides of the same coin. The byproduct of the poles manifesting is rhythm, or a constant flow. Now that rhythm has manifested, the next byproduct would be cause and effect, stating how every action has the equal and opposite reaction, coming to the conclusion that the principle of gender, which manifests itself in everything, is not talking about a physiological aspect, more so that it's talking about the masculine and feminine energies in the universe. In the first video, I referenced the book, The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need by Joanne Woolfolk. On the 5th page, she talks about dualities, or the masculine and feminine aspects of the zodiac. She explains how in modern terminology, the masculine signs are defined as outer directed and strong through action, and the feminine signs are self-contained and strong through inner reserves. With that same concept, we can now have a better understanding of how energy manifests itself through feminine and masculine aspects, which takes us into the 4th video of the Aquarius Theory, where I review sacred geometry. And sacred geometry differs from mundane geometry purely in the sense that its moves, concepts, and products are regarded as having symbolic value and meaning. I explained in that video how the ancient Greeks viewed numbers and that they had meaning. I then go on to explain numbers 1 through 12 and the meanings associated with them. also stating how geometry is the order of space as number in space. We then start to review sacred geometry, starting with the point. The point has 0 dimensions, and then it evolves going from one point to the next point into a line. And from that line, it evolves into 3 geometrical shapes: the circle, the triangle, and the square. I then review the point and its evolution to the geometrical pattern, the flower of life, and compare it to the Genesis creation story found in the Bible. At the end of the video, I gave my personal interpretation, which was that sacred geometry is the visual representation of physical manifestation of energy. Which brings us to the present moment and this video, as we take a closer look into vibration, frequency, and energy. Now let's take a closer look into vibration, frequency, and energy. Understand that I did place them in correct order, and here's why. Vibration is defined as an oscillation of the parts of a fluid or an elastic solid whose equilibrium has been disturbed, or of an electromagnetic wave. Frequency, the rate at which something occurs or is repeated over a particular period of time or in a given sample. The rate at which a vibration occurs that constitutes a wave either in a material, as in sound waves, or in an electromagnetic field, as in radio waves and light. Energy, the property of matter and radiation, which is manifest as a capacity to perform work, such as causing motion or the interaction of molecules. So again, vibration is the oscillation of the parts of a fluid or an elastic solid. Frequency is the rate at which a vibration occurs that constitutes a wave through sound and radio waves and light. And energy is the property of matter and radiation as a capacity to perform work. Now let's look at matter. Matter is the physical substance in general, as distinct from mind and spirit in physics, that which occupies space and possesses rest mass, especially as distinct from energy. It is important to understand matter because it is long said that everything in the universe is made up of atoms and energy. Fascinating enough, in physics, matter is only being talked about in the physical aspect. You see, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Thoth talks about how man is threefold in nature: etheric, astral, and physical. Etheric being representative of spirit, and astral representing the mind. He then goes on to state how the spiritual aspect and the physical aspect are only linked together by the mental aspect of yourself. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Taking a look at energy and its various forms. All energy can be in one or two states: potential energy or kinetic energy. Potential energy is stored energy that depends upon the relative position of various parts of a system. Kinetic energy is energy which a body possesses by virtue of being in motion. Energy of motion, observable as the movement of an object, particle, or set of particles. Now keep in mind the third principle of Hermeticism is the principle of vibration, that everything moves, everything vibrates. And by that stance, everything would have kinetic energy, which is a body that possesses by virtue of being in motion. There are 5 types of kinetic energy we will now go over: radiant, thermal, sound, electrical, and mechanical. Radiant energy is the form of energy associated within the movement of light, electromagnetic waves, or particles. Radiant energy includes visible light as well as other things that are not visible to the unaided eye, like X-rays, gamma rays, and radio waves. Light, like the light from the sun, is one type of radiant energy. This energy is what makes life on Earth possible. Thermal energy is heat energy or the energy of moving and vibrating particles. Heat and thermal energy are directly related to temperature. Adjacent objects that are different temperatures will spontaneously transfer heat to try to come to the same temperature. Solarschools.net states that sound is the movement of energy through a substance, like air or water, and is caused by vibrations. Solids, liquids, and gases transmit sound as waves. Electrical energy is energy from moving electrons. All matter is made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of smaller particles called protons, which have positive charge, neutrons, which have neutral charge, and electrons, which have negative charge. Protons and neutrons are found in the center or nucleus of an atom. Electrons orbit around the nucleus like the moon orbits the Earth. Some materials, particularly metals, have electrons that are only loosely attached to their atoms. They can easily be made to move from one atom to another if an electric or magnetic field is applied to them. When those electrons move among the atoms of matter, a current of electricity is created. Mechanical energy is the energy possessed by an object due to its movement or position. In other words, an object possesses mechanical energy when it has the ability to do work to its position or motion. Mechanical energy can take the form of either kinetic energy, which is energy due to an object's motion, or potential energy, which is stored energy due to an object's position. The law of conservation, first proposed and tested by Emile du Châtelet, states that the total amount of energy in a system remains constant, although energy within the system can be changed from one form to another or transferred from one object to another. Simply put, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only transfers from one form to another. This statement is important, especially when trying to conceptualize that the universe is made up of energy, and through all that energy, nothing is created or destroyed. It may appear so to our physical eyes, but that is not so. It simply transfers from one form to another. By now you may be thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, did you know that humans produce radiant energy, which is a form of energy associated with the movement of light, electromagnetic waves, or particles? Emphasis on the electromagnetic waves. And these waves come in the form of toroidal fields. Let's look at electromagnetic radiation for examples. Electromagnetic radiation is a kind of radiation that includes visible light, radio waves, gamma rays, and X-rays, in which electric and magnetic fields vary simultaneously. And if you don't know what electromagnetism is, it is the physical interaction among electrical charges, magnetic moments, in the electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field can be static, slow changing, or form waves. Electromagnetic waves are generally known as light and obey the laws of optics. Again, electromagnetic waves are generally known as light. And just as we were taught in school, the light spectrum is the many different wavelengths of energy produced by a light source. So if you were paying attention in science class, you would know that light ranges from radio waves to gamma rays. Visible light, what we perceive with our own two eyes, is just a small piece of the light spectrum, sitting in between ultraviolet rays and infrared rays. The truth of the matter is that we cannot perceive the world in its entirety based off of visible light, so that we must now revisit the old saying, walk by faith and not by sight. And since we're going into the age of Aquarius, I'm going to remix that saying to go as, walk by knowledge and not by sight, because when you know better, you do better. So before I give my interpretation of the information, I'm going to play a clip from an interview in 2019 of Terrence Howard. I want you to pay attention to what he says.
Good luck to all of us. Lucius is in the house. Terrence Howard here. You made huge headlines when you said, after you complete these 15 episodes of Empire, you got to walk away for a while or forever?
For good. I mean, everyone keeps trying to tell me, don't say it's forever, but I've spent 37 years pretending to be people so that people can pretend to watch and enjoy what I'm doing when I've made some discoveries in my own personal life with the science that, Pythagoras was searching for. I was able to open up the flower of life properly and find the real wave conjugations that we've been looking for 10,000 years. Why would I continue, walking on water for tips when I've got an entire generation to teach a whole new world?
That's a big remark.
Yeah.
What do you intend to do?
Well, let me put it this way. All energy in the universe is expressed in motion. All motion is expressed in waves. All waves are curved. So where does the straight lines come from to make the platonic solids? There are no straight lines. So when I took the flower of life and opened it properly, I found a whole new wave conjugations that expose the in-between spaces. It's the thing that holds us all together.
Nonetheless, Terrence Howard received a lot of backlash for the comments made that night. People even went as far as to say that he was insane. But based off of the information that we went over today, I can confirm that I heard no lies told. The sad part about it is when you're ahead of the curve, you're often mistaken as being insane because your thinking capacity is much higher than those around you. But that is the key to progression. We have to continue to evolve and continue to challenge old paradigms and old ways of thinking, because it is that process which allows us to create and manifest the world we want to live in around us. Which brings us to my personal interpretation of the information, which is the emphasis of knowing yourself. Understand that your mental health is important, as it connects the physical you, or your lower nature, to the spiritual you, or your higher nature. And when all three aspects are in harmony, an individual is able to see the many correlations of life, or the many unlike concepts, and then find where they correspond. This is because your individual mind is just a piece of the collective or universal mind. And as quantum physics and other sciences try to find answers about our beginning, it would make sense to me that in this physical reality, what we perceive as God is not a man in a cloud, but a vibration, whose frequency is at such a rate it would be impossible to try to perceive it based off of our own two eyes. Which would give us a clue on the reason why we are here. We are here to learn and grow, to experience, to find out what works, and that ultimately there is no right or wrong, because there is no manual to what we call life. I would assume that most people believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, which means we cannot take the physical world as the end-all be-all, but that we should take a greater look into the energetic aspects of not only ourselves, but the world around us. And as we continue to transition into the age of Aquarius, I would like to give you a few tips to keep in mind. So as we transition out of the age of Pisces, where the key words was I believe, we're going into the age of Aquarius, where the key words is I know. And remember, the difference between thinking and knowing is you. Know that information is just that, information, and it is accessible to anybody who's tuned in to the right frequency, and that the construct of your own reality is mostly based off the perception and ideas of other people, and it is from these constructs that we must free ourselves. Again, like the movie The Matrix, the whole concept was to free the minds of the people who were still stuck inside of the Matrix. Simply, I am here to make you think. You can believe whatever you want to believe, because again, perception is reality. And with that, we will conclude today's video. So please make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell, so when I go live or I post a new video, you'll know. And as always, family, peace, love, and light.